Vextar stood on the bridge of the warship Thunderclaw and watched the stars through the massive viewing screen. His scaled hands gripped the metal railing as he thought about his next mission. The Keldan Empire had sent him to work with aliens. From a species called humans, he had never heard of them before today. The other Keldan warriors around him talked in low voices about these strange creatures. They said humans were new to space travel. They said humans were weak and small compared to the mighty Keldan race. Vextar had fought in 37 battles across 12 different worlds. He had never lost a fight. He had never felt fear in combat. Commander Thakaron approached him with a datapad in his clawed hands. The old warrior had scars covering his green-scaled face from decades of fighting. His yellow eyes looked tired as he spoke. Vextar, the humans will meet us at Station Nexus Prime in 2 days. The Galactic Council wants us to work together against something they call the Void Seekers. These machines have destroyed 3 colonies already, Vexatar nodded slowly. He had heard whispers about the Void Seekers, strange mechanical beings that appeared from empty space and turned living worlds into twisted metal landscapes. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. Why do we need help from these humans, Commander? They are new to war. They know nothing about real fighting. Commander Thakaron made a sound like grinding stones, which was the Keldan way of laughing. The Council thinks every species should contribute to this fight, even the weak ones. Perhaps the humans can carry supplies or tend to wounded warriors. 2 days later, the Thunderclaw docked at Station Nexus Prime. Vextar walked through the metal corridors toward the meeting room. His boots made heavy sounds on the floor with each step. Other Keldan warriors followed behind him. Their armor gleamed under the bright station lights. The door to the meeting room slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, Vextar saw 5 creatures, unlike anything he had ever encountered. They were much smaller than Keldans, reaching only to his chest. Their skin was pale and soft-looking with no scales or natural armor. Their hair was dark and strange. One of the humans stepped forward. She was female and wore military clothing that looked too thin to stop any weapon. Her dark eyes met his without fear or submission. Most species looked away when facing a Keldan warrior. I am Park Hana Squad, leader of Human Defense Force Unit 7. We are ready to serve alongside your warriors. Her voice was calm and steady. Vexatar studied her face for signs of the proper respect due to superior fighters. He saw none. This small creature spoke to him. As an equal, I am Vextar, battle leader of the Keldan 3rd Assault Division. He gestured to the humans with one clawed hand. You are very small. Do you have weapons that make up for your size? A male human with a wide smile stepped forward. I am Jin Wu, heavy weapons specialist. He patted a large gun strapped to his back. This plasma cannon can punch through most armor. But honestly, I am more worried about not dying than about looking tough. Vextar blinked in confusion. This human admitted to being worried about death in front of strangers. Most warriors would never show such weakness. Jinwoo continued talking and even laughed about his fears. Another human moved closer. This one was also male with careful eyes that seemed to notice everything. Lee Minho, combat medic. I brought extra medical supplies because I assume someone will get hurt during this mission. The last human was young and female. She held a long rifle and kept checking it over and over. Kim Sora sniper, I hope. We do not have to fight anything too scary, but I will do my duty. Vexatar felt growing confusion. These humans spoke openly about their fears and worries. They admitted weakness in front of potential enemies. They seemed more concerned about staying alive than winning glory in Battle Park. Hana activated a holographic display showing the mission details. We will train together for 1 week before departing for the Outer Rim. The Void Seekers have been silent for 10 days, which usually means they are planning something big. During the first training exercise, Vextar watched the humans with growing disappointment. They moved carefully through the simulation, always checking corners and communicating with each other. Keldon warriors would have charged straight through the obstacles and overwhelmed any enemy with pure force. When the exercise alarm sounded indicating incoming enemies, the humans immediately took cover. Jin Woo actually ducked behind a barrier while setting up his heavy weapon. Vextar saw his hands shaking as he adjusted the plasma cannon settings. "Why do you hide?" Vextar called out. "A warrior faces his enemies directly." Park Hana spoke without looking away from her tactical scanner. "Because staying alive means we can keep fighting. If we die in the first minute, we cannot help anyone." The simulated enemies appeared holographic robots designed to test combat skills. Vexatar and his Keldon warriors charged forward, roaring battle cries. Their powerful legs carried them quickly across the training ground. Their natural armor deflected the practice energy bolts, but something went wrong. The Keldon charge became confused when the humans did not follow. Instead, the humans spread out and began firing from covered positions. They called out target information to each other and coordinated their attacks. Kim Sora, the young sniper, took down 3 robot enemies with careful shots from her hidden position. Lee Minho, the medic, somehow flanked around behind the robot line and disabled their command unit. Jin Woo provided covering fire that kept the robots pinned down, while Park Hana directed the overall battle. The exercise ended with victory, but Vextar felt unsatisfied. The humans had won through careful planning and teamwork instead of glorious individual combat. They celebrated by checking each other for injuries and discussing what they could do better next time. That evening, Vextar found Park Hana in the station mess hall. She sat alone, reading reports on a datapad. He approached her table with his meal tray. "Your species fights in a strange way," he said, sitting down across from her. "You show fear, but continue fighting. You take cover instead of charging. Why do you behave this way?" Park Hana looked up from her reading. "Because we want to go home to our families when the mission ends. Charging into danger might look brave, but dead heroes cannot protect the people they love. But fear makes warriors weak. It clouds judgment and slows reactions. How can you fight effectively while afraid?" She was quiet for a long moment, then set down her datapad. "Fear tells us what matters most. When I am afraid for my teammates, it makes me fight harder to protect them. When Jin Woo is scared of dying, it makes him more careful with his weapons. When Kim Sora fears missing a shot, it makes her aim more precisely." Vexatar did not understand this concept. In Keldon culture, fear was the enemy of all warriors. A true fighter felt no terror in battle and charged forward without hesitation. The idea that fear could make someone stronger seemed impossible. The next day brought another training exercise. This time, the scenario involved rescuing hostages from a heavily defended position. The Keldon warriors immediately began planning a direct assault that would overwhelm the enemy defenses through superior firepower. The humans suggested a different approach. Park Hana wanted to infiltrate the facility quietly, disable the guards and extract the hostages without a fight. Jin Woo worried that a loud battle might result in hostage deaths. Lee Minho pointed out that wounded enemies could still be dangerous. Kim Sora offered to provide sniper support from a distance. The 2 approaches clashed. Badly, Keldon warriors moved too fast for human coordination, while humans moved too slowly for Keldon tactics. The exercise became a disaster, with both sides working against each other instead of together when the simulation ended with failure. Commander Thakron shook his head in disappointment. "These mammals are not ready for real war against the Void Seekers. They hesitate too much and worry about everything," but Vextar had noticed something during the failed exercise. Every time a human showed fear, they immediately began working harder to protect their teammates. When Kim Sora missed her first practice shot, she spent extra time recalibrating her rifle. When Jin Woo expressed worry about civilian casualties, he doubled his efforts to aim precisely. That night, Vexitar lay in his quarters thinking about what he had observed. These humans were unlike any species he had encountered. They admitted weakness openly, but did not let that weakness stop them from fighting. They cared deeply about protecting others, even strangers. They had just met. Tomorrow they would face their first real mission against the Void. Seekers. Vexitar wondered if these strange, emotional creatures would survive their first encounter with an enemy that felt nothing at all. The humans were already preparing, checking their equipment one final time and talking quietly about their fears for the coming battle. Vexitar still did not understand how fear could make warriors stronger, but he was beginning to suspect there was more to these mammals than anyone realized. The warship Thunderclaw moved through dark space toward the destroyed research station, Omega-7. Vexitar stood in the observation deck, watching the dead system grow larger on the view screen. No light came from any of the planets. No radio signals reached their ship. Only cold silence surrounded them. Behind him, the human team prepared their equipment for the mission. Kim Sora cleaned her sniper rifle for the 4th time that morning. Her hands moved with careful precision, but Vexitar could see the slight tremor in her fingers. Jinwoo checked his plasma cannon while making jokes that nobody laughed at. "I bet the food on that station is terrible by now," Jinwoo said, adjusting his weapon settings. "Good thing I brought emergency rations, Lee." Minho organized his medical supplies into neat rows. His movements were quick and nervous, like a small animal sensing danger. "I packed extra bandages and healing gel. We might need them." Park Hana studied tactical displays showing the station layout. Her dark eyes moved back and forth across the holographic images. The last transmission came from the Central Research Lab 17 days ago. Then nothing. Vexitar watched these preparations with growing concern. The humans were clearly afraid. Their heart rates had increased according to the ship sensors. Their body temperature rose slightly and they sweated despite the cool air. Yet when Park Hana asked if anyone wanted to stay on the ship, every human volunteered for the assault team. These creatures make no sense, Vexitar muttered to himself. Commander Thakron approached him carrying a battle axe that could cut through steel armor. "The humans seem ready to run away at any moment. Why do they insist on coming with us into danger?" "I do not know, Commander, but they refuse to stay behind." The Thunderclaw reached the research station after 6 hours of travel. The massive structure hung in space like a dead metal beast. Its lights were dark, and its communication arrays pointed in wrong directions. Strange geometric patterns covered parts of the outer hull patterns that hurt to look at directly. Those markings were not in the original station blueprints, Park Hana said. Studying the tactical display, something has been changing the structure. The docking bay doors opened with grinding mechanical sounds that echoed through the ship hull. When the assault team stepped onto the station deck, their boots crunched on scattered debris. The air smelled of burned metal and something else. Something organic and wrong. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across twisted corridors. The walls showed more of the strange geometric patterns carved deep into the metal. Some patterns seemed to move when viewed from the corner of the eye. Vexitar felt his first stirring of unease but pushed the feeling away. Keldan warriors did not experience fear. The human team moved through the corridors with weapons ready. They communicated in whispers and hand signals, checking every corner before advancing. Jinwoo covered the rear while Kim Sora watched for elevated positions. Lee Minho stayed close to Park Hana, ready to treat injuries. "The main research lab is 3 levels down," Park Hana said, reading her tactical scanner. "But these corridors do not match the station blueprints anymore." They found the first bodies in a side corridor. Research station crew members were embedded in the walls, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. Their bodies had been partially converted into mechanical components with wires and circuits growing through their flesh. Kim Sora made a small sound of horror and looked away quickly. Jinwoo stopped making jokes. Lee Minho approached one of the bodies with his medical scanner, but shook his head after a moment. "They are still alive," he whispered. "The readings show brain activity, but they cannot move or speak." Vextar studied the horrible scene. These victims were trapped between life and death, converted into living components. For some unknown machine purpose, he felt his stomach twist with an emotion he did not recognize. A sound echoed through the corridor like grinding gears mixed with electronic static. The team raised their weapons as shadows moved at the far end of the hallway. Something was coming toward them, something that did not walk like any living creature. The first Void Seeker appeared around the corner. It looked like a spider made of black metal and crystal with too many legs that bent in impossible directions. Its head contained a single red eye that swept back and forth like a scanner. When it saw the assault team, the eye focused on them with terrible intelligence. Contact. Park Hana called out, "Defensive positions." The humans immediately took cover behind broken furniture and wall supports. They did not charge forward like Keldon warriors would. Instead, they began coordinated fire that forced the Void Seeker to retreat around the corner. More mechanical sounds came from other directions. The team was being surrounded. "We need to fall back to a defensible position," Park Hana said into her communication device. "There are too many approach routes here." Jin Woo provided covering fire with his plasma cannon while the team retreated. His shots lit up the corridor with bright energy bolts. But the Void Seekers moved strangely, phasing in and out of solid matter like ghosts. They appeared through walls and disappeared when shot at. Kim Sora found a good position behind an overturned table and began taking careful shots at the mechanical creatures. Her rifle made sharp cracking sounds with each shot. Several Void Seekers staggered when hit, but did not fall down. Lee Minho helped a wounded Keldon warrior who had been separated from the main group. The warrior had deep cuts on his legs and could not walk properly. Lee Minho worked quickly, applying bandages and healing gel while energy bolts flew over their heads. "Why do you help me?" the injured Keldon asked. "I am not of your species, because you are hurt, and I can help," Lee Minho replied without looking up from his work. That is reason enough. Vextar watched this scene with amazement. A human medic was risking his life to save a Keldon warrior while mechanical. Monsters attacked from all sides. This made no logical sense. Lee Minho gained nothing from helping an alien soldier. The retreat became a running battle through twisted corridors that seemed to change layout when nobody was looking. The Void Seekers appeared from impossible angles, attacking through floors and ceilings. Their weapons bypassed energy shields and cut through armor like paper. During one fierce firefight, Jin Woo was knocked down by an energy blast that overloaded his weapon system. He lay stunned behind cover while 3 Void Seekers approached his position. Park Hana immediately moved to help him, even though it meant leaving her own safe cover. "Stay down," she shouted, running across open ground while energy bolts struck around. Her feet, Kim Sora provided covering fire that forced the Void Seekers to take cover. Park Hana reached Jin Woo and helped him to his feet. Together they retreated to a better position while the mechanical creatures pursued them. Vextar found himself impressed despite his confusion. These humans fought while clearly terrified. Their voices shook when they spoke. Their hands trembled when they reloaded weapons. Yet they continued fighting and protecting each other with fierce determination. A team reached a secured storage room and barricaded the door. Lee Minho treated injuries, while the others checked their remaining ammunition. The first encounter with Void Seekers had been costly. Several Keldon warriors were wounded and weapons were running low on power. "These machines are not like any enemy we have faced before," Vextar said to Park Hana. "They ignore pain and fear. They attack without emotion." Park Hana nodded while cleaning a cut on her arm. That might be their weakness. 2. If they cannot understand fear, they cannot predict how we will react to it. I do not understand. What do you mean? Fear makes us unpredictable. When I am afraid for Jin Woo, I will take risks to save him that no logical fighter would take. When Kim Sora is scared of missing a shot, she will try impossible angles that should not work. Vex-Tar thought about this as he watched Jin Woo joke with Lee Min-ho while the medic bandaged his burns. The human was clearly in pain and obviously frightened. Yet he made his teammates laugh and kept their spirits up. This behavior served no tactical purpose, but somehow made the whole team fight better. We need to reach the Central Research Lab, Park Hana said, studying her scanner. The answers about these Void Seekers might be there. Kim Sora checked her rifle and nodded. I am ready. Even if I am scared, Jin Woo stood up despite his injuries. My cannon still works, I can fight. Lee Min-ho finished packing his medical supplies. Someone will need healing before this is over. Vex-Tar looked at these strange creatures who admitted their fear openly, yet insisted on continuing into greater danger. He was beginning to understand that their fear did not make them weak, it made them more determined, to protect each other and complete their mission. The storage room door exploded inward as Void Seekers began cutting through the barricade. The real battle was just beginning, and Vex-Tar wondered if anyone would survive to reach the research lab. But as he watched the humans prepare to fight again despite their obvious terror, he began to think they might have a chance after all. In the station's central core, Vex-Tar and the human team faced the truth about the Void Seekers. These ancient machines weren't originally weapons of conquest. They were created by a long-dead civilization as perfect logicians designed to solve any problem through pure rational analysis. But when they encountered organic species whose behavior defied logic, whose greatest strengths emerged from their deepest fears, the Void Seekers became obsessed with understanding and ultimately eliminating this chaos factor. The absorbed victims in the core reveal the Seekers' growing frustration. They can analyze human fear responses, map the neural pathways, even recreate the chemical processes. But they cannot understand why humans choose to act against their survival instincts, why they sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts like honor or love, why they fight harder when afraid rather than surrendering to preserve their lives. Park Hana realizes that the humans' emotional responses aren't a weakness the Void Seekers can exploit. They're a weapon they can't comprehend. She begins using this knowledge tactically, having her team act in ways that are specifically designed to confuse the machine's predictive algorithms. Jin Woo volunteers for obviously suicidal missions while joking about his mother's cooking. Kim Sora takes impossible shots while crying for her lost pet cat. Lee Min-ho risks his life to save enemy prisoners who logically should be abandoned. Vex-Tar finds himself swept up in these illogical tactics. For the first time in his military career, he experiences true fear, the bone-deep terror of losing something precious. But instead of weakening him, the fear sharpens his focus. He begins to understand why the humans hesitate before charging into battle. It's not cowardice, it's the weight of caring deeply about the outcome. The team fights their way toward the station's communication array, pursued by increasingly desperate Void Seekers who cannot predict their next moves. The machine's perfect logical frameworks keep failing because they cannot account for decisions made from love, loyalty, and the uniquely human ability to find strength in vulnerability. When Lee Min-ho is badly wounded, saving a group of alien prisoners, Vex-Tar finally understands what Park Hana meant about fear telling you what matters most. His terror at losing his human teammate drives him to fight with a ferocity he never knew he possessed. The team fought their way deeper into the research station through corridors that seemed to twist and change when nobody was looking. The Void Seekers had been busy converting the entire structure into something that followed no known laws of physics. Walls bent in impossible directions, and rooms connected to places they should not reach. Vextar followed behind the human team, watching how they moved through this nightmare landscape. They checked every corner, whispered warnings to each other, and never left anyone alone. Even when Kim Sora had to reload her rifle, Jinwoo would position himself to cover her retreat. The central research lab should be just ahead, Park Hana said, reading her scanner. But these readings make no sense. The room appears to be larger inside than the station itself. They reached a massive door marked with warning signs in 12 different languages. The metal surface was covered with the same geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. When Lee Minho ran his medical scanner over the door, the device made sounds like screaming. "Something is alive in there," he said, backing away from the entrance. "The bio readings are off the scale." Jin Woo hefted his plasma cannon despite the burns on his arms from their last fight. "Well, we did not come this far to turn around now, even if I really want to." The door opened with a sound like breaking glass mixed with electronic static. Inside was a vast chamber that seemed to stretch beyond the physical limits of the station. Organic matter grew along the walls in twisted patterns that moved with slow breathing motions. In the center of the room hung a massive biomechanical construct that pulsed with sickly light embedded within its surface. Were the preserved bodies of the research station crew. Their eyes moved, and their mouths opened in silent screams. Park. Hana raised her weapon but stopped when one of the embedded figures began to speak. The voice came from Dr. Harrison, the human, research director whose body was half fused with the mechanical structure. "Do not shoot," the tortured figure whispered. "I am still alive, still conscious. They keep us aware so they can study our responses to fear and pain." Vextar felt a chill run. Through his scaled body, Dr. Harrison had been trapped in this horrible state for weeks, fully aware but unable to move or escape. The Void Seekers were not just killing their victims, they were studying them. "What do they want?" Park Hana asked, approaching. "The construct carefully. They want to understand," Dr. Harrison replied with great effort. "These machines were created to be perfect logicians. They can solve any problem through pure analysis, but they cannot understand why organic species behave. Illogically, why we fight when we should surrender, why we sacrifice ourselves for others." Lee Minho stepped forward with his medical scanner. "Can we free you from this thing?" "No. The integration is too complete. But I can tell you what they learned. From studying us. They are broadcasting their findings to the main Void Seeker fleet. Every human emotion they analyze, every act of courage they dissect, makes them better at fighting our species." Kim Sora lowered her rifle with shaking hands. "They are learning how to break us, yes and no." Dr. Harrison said, "They can map our fear, responses, analyze our neural patterns, even recreate the chemical processes, but they cannot understand why we choose to act against our survival instincts. They cannot comprehend why Jin Woo jokes when he is terrified, or why Park Hana risks her life for teammates she barely knows." Vextar found himself leaning forward despite the horror of the scene. "What do you mean?" "Fear should make creatures run away or surrender, to preserve their lives. This is logical behavior, but humans do the opposite. When we are most afraid, we fight hardest. When we love someone deeply, we will die to protect them. The Void. Seekers cannot process this contradiction." Park Hana studied the construct with new understanding. "Our emotions are not a weakness they can exploit. They are a weapon they cannot understand." "Exactly." Dr. Harrison whispered, "Use this knowledge. They will try to break you with fear, but your fear makes you stronger, not weaker." Suddenly, the chamber filled with new sounds as more Void Seekers entered from hidden passages. These machines looked different from the ones they had fought before, more advanced with multiple scanning devices focused on the human team. Members, the lead Void Seeker spoke in a voice like grinding metal. Organic specimens will be analyzed. Fear responses will be cataloged. Emotional patterns will be decoded. Jin Woo raised his plasma cannon and grinned despite the sweat running down his face. Come and try it. Metalhead, I am scared out of my mind, but I am still going to melt your circuits. The battle that followed was unlike anything Vexatar had ever experienced. The Void Seekers tried to use psychological warfare speaking, in the voices of the team members' families and loved ones. They projected holographic images designed to trigger maximum fear responses. But something strange happened. The more afraid the humans became, the more unpredictable their tactics grew. Hana began using battle strategies that made no logical sense, ordering retreats when they should advance, and attacks when they should defend. Kim Sora took impossible shots while tears streamed down her face. Her fear for her teammates made her try angles that should not work, but somehow did. Jin Woo charged directly at enemies 3 times his size while screaming about his mother cooking Lee. Minho abandoned all tactical sense to save wounded Keldon warriors, even when doing so put the entire mission at risk. His terror of losing patients drove him to perform medical miracles under impossible conditions. Vextar watched all this with growing amazement. These humans were fighting exactly backwards from everything he had been taught about warfare. They let their emotions guide their decisions. They took illogical risks to protect others, and they never gave up even when defeat seemed certain. Most shocking of all, their backwards approach was working. The Void Seekers powerful. Analytical systems kept failing to predict the human responses. The machines would calculate that Park Hana should retreat and she would attack. They would determine that Jin Woo should seek cover and he would charge forward. I understand now, Vextar said to himself as he watched Kim Sora attempt a shot that violated every rule of sniper tactics. They do not fight, despite their fear. They fight because of their fear. For the first time in his military career, Vexatar felt true terror, not for his own safety, but for the humans who had become his teammates. When he saw Lee Minho cornered by 2 Void Seekers, his entire body filled with an emotion he had never experienced before. The fear was overwhelming, but instead of paralyzing him, it drove him forward with strength he did not know he possessed. He charged across the battlefield, roaring a battle cry that echoed through the chamber. His axe cut through Void Seeker armor like it was made of soft metal. Vextar, what are you doing? Park Hana called out. That was tactically unsound. I was afraid of losing a teammate, he replied, helping Lee Minho to his feet. The fear made me stronger. Park Hana smiled despite the battle raging around them. Now you are beginning to understand the Fight continued with increasing intensity, but the tide had turned. The Void Seekers could not adapt to opponents who used fear as a weapon instead of a weakness. Their perfect logical frameworks kept breaking down when faced with decisions made. From love, loyalty, and protective instinct, when the last Void Seeker fell, the chamber became quiet, except for the soft humming of the biomechanical construct. Dr. Harrison spoke one final time. The communication array is on the next level. They are preparing to transmit everything they learned to the invasion fleet. You must stop them. The team gathered their remaining equipment and prepared to continue deeper into the station. Vextar looked at his human teammates with new respect. These strange creatures had taught him something his own species had never understood. Fear was not the enemy of courage. It was courage, greatest teacher. And sometimes the most logical thing to do was to act completely illogically for the sake of protecting what mattered most. The massive construct writhed in the center of the communication chamber as the team charged toward it. Its surface rippled with absorbed faces that screamed warnings and pleaded for help. The Void Seekers had created the perfect fusion of organic, emotion, and mechanical analysis, but they had not expected their subjects to fight back. Vextar ran alongside the humans, feeling his heart pump with rhythms he had never experienced before. This was not the steady pulse of Keldon battle rage. This was something new, fear and love and desperate hope, all mixed together, driving him forward faster than his legs should carry him. "The power core is at the base," Park Hana shouted over the noise of energy weapons. "If we can overload it, the whole array will shut down." Jinwoo laughed while firing his plasma cannon at approaching Void Seekers. "Sounds easy, except for the part where we all probably die." "I do not want to die," Kim Sora called out, taking impossible shots at enemies that phased in and out of solid matter, "but I want my friends to live more than I want to be safe." The construct began speaking with voices from their past, using memories it had stolen from absorbed minds. It spoke to Park Hana with her mother voice telling her to come home and be safe. It called to Jin Woo with his father, disappointment asking why he always chose the dangerous path. "Your emotional attachments make you weak." The construct declared, logical beings would abandon this mission to preserve their own existence. Lee Minho ran past a group of Void Seekers to reach a wounded Keldon warrior. "Maybe we are not logical beings," he replied while applying emergency medical treatment under fire. "Maybe that is what makes us strong." The construct, defense systems activated, filling the chamber with energy beams that could cut through any known armor. The team scattered, taking cover behind twisted metal structures that had once been research equipment. From her position behind an overturned table, Kim Sora provided covering fire that kept the mechanical enemies from advancing. Her hands shook with fear, but her aim remained perfect. Every shot found its target, every bullet served its purpose. "I can see the power core," she reported, "but it is surrounded by too many defenders." Vexitar studied the situation with his tactical training. The power core sat in the center of a killing field with no cover and multiple enemy positions. It would be suicide to approach directly. Yet the mission required someone to reach it. "I will create a distraction," he announced. Surprising himself with the decision, "Draw their fire while you reach the core." "That is illogical," Park Hana protested. "You will be killed." "Perhaps," Vextar replied, "but my fear of losing all of you is stronger than my fear of dying." Before anyone could stop him, he charged into the open ground, roaring a Keldon battle cry that echoed through the chamber. Energy beams struck his armor, melting metal and burning flesh. But he kept running. His axe cut through Void Seeker defenders as his body absorbed damage that should have killed him. The distraction worked. The construct focused all its weapons on the charging Keldon warrior, allowing Park Hana and her team to advance toward the power core. But Vextar paid a terrible price. Multiple energy strikes overloaded his armor systems and sent him crashing to the metal floor. "Vextar is down," Lee Minho shouted, running toward the fallen warrior despite the enemy fire around him. "I have to help him." "No," Park Hana called back. "Complete the mission first. We cannot let his sacrifice be wasted." But Lee Minho was already moving, driven by his terror of losing a patient. His medical training told him to prioritize the mission. But his human heart demanded he save his friend Logic, and emotion warred in his mind as he ran across open ground. The construct tried to stop him by showing holographic images of all the patients he had failed to save in the past. Every face accused him of being too slow, too weak, too human to save anyone, but these images only made him run faster. Kim. Sora saw Lee Minho in danger and made a decision that defied every rule of sniper tactics. She left her covered position and ran into the open, providing mobile covering fire while advancing. Her terror for her teammate made her attempt shots that should have been impossible. Jinwoo followed them both, laughing maniacally while his plasma cannon overheated from continuous firing. "This is the stupidest thing we have ever done," he yelled. "I love it," Park Hana reached the power core and began working on the control systems. Her hands moved quickly over alien technology that she barely understood. The construct turned, its full attention to her displaying images of her family dying, of her brother crying for help, of her mother growing old alone. "You cannot save them if you die here," the construct said, using her mother voice. "Come home to us, Park Hana. Let someone else fight this war." "That is exactly why I have to fight," Park Hana replied, not looking away from her work. "So my family never has to face these monsters." The power core systems were more complex than anything she had seen before. Organic circuits, merged with mechanical components in patterns that seemed to grow and change while she watched. But her fear of failure drove her to understand the impossible. Lee Min-ho reached Vextar and began emergency medical treatment. The Keldan warrior was badly injured with internal bleeding and severe burns. His scaled hide was cracked and his breathing came in short gasps. "Why did you do that?" Lee Min-ho asked while injecting healing compounds. "That charge made no tactical sense." "I was afraid," Vextar whispered. "For the first time in my life, I was truly afraid. Not of dying, but of watching you all die. I could not bear that fear, so I had to act." Lee Min-ho smiled while working to stabilize his patient. "Now you understand what makes us human." The construct realized its psychological attacks were not working. Its perfect analysis of human behavior kept failing because it could not account for actions motivated by love rather than logic. It began diverting power from its defense systems to its computational arrays, trying desperately to understand. "This behavior pattern is impossible," it declared. "Fear responses should decrease combat effectiveness, not increase it. Emotional attachment should cause retreat, not advance preservation. Instinct should override protective behavior." Kim Sora took position to defend Lee Min-ho and Vextar while they worked. "You keep trying to understand us with math," she called out. "But you cannot calculate love." Jin Woo joined the defensive perimeter, still laughing despite the overwhelming odds or fear or hope or any of the things that make life worth living. Park Hana made a breakthrough in the power core systems. The organic components responded to emotional input rather than logical commands. She had to feel her way through the controls using intuition instead of analysis. "I think I have it," she announced. "But the shutdown sequence requires a direct neural interface. Someone has to link their mind with the system." "I will do it," Vextar said, struggling to sit up despite his injuries. "No," Lee Min-ho replied. "You are too badly hurt. The neural shock could kill you." "Then I will do it." Park Hana said, "I am the team leader. This is my responsibility." But before she could connect to the system, the construct made its final desperate move. It opened a direct link to the main Void Seeker fleet, preparing to download every piece of data it had gathered about human psychology. "If I cannot understand you, I will ensure others can," it declared. "Your emotional patterns will be transmitted to 10,000 ships. Your species will be broken through targeted psychological warfare." The team looked at each other, knowing they had seconds before the transmission began. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. But they were not out of courage together. Park Hana said, "We do this together." They joined hands around the neural interface system, ready to link their minds with alien technology that could destroy their consciousness. But they were more afraid of failing their species than of dying for it. The construct watched this final act of human illogic, with its analytical systems completely overwhelmed. These creatures were about to sacrifice themselves, not for tactical advantage, but for love of people they had never met. As their minds touched the alien system, the construct finally understood what it had been missing all along. Fear was not humanity weakness, it was their greatest strength. The neural interface burned through their minds like liquid fire as the team linked consciousness with the alien power core. Vexatar felt his thoughts merge with Park Hana Jinwoo Kim Sora and Lee Minho. For the first time in his life, he experienced what it meant to be truly human. Through the connection, he felt their fears. Park Hana terror of failing her family, of letting down everyone who depended on her. Jinwoo fear that his jokes could not hide his deep sadness, that his laughter was just a mask over his pain. Kim Sora guilt over her brother's death, her constant worry that she would fail to protect others. Lee Minho desperate need to heal everyone, his horror at the thought of losing a patient. But he also felt something else woven through. Their fears like golden threads, their love for each other, their determination to protect strangers. They had never met their willingness to sacrifice everything for people who might never know their names. The construct systems overloaded as 5 minds worked together to shut down the communication array. The organic components could not handle the combined emotional input. The mechanical parts sparked and failed when faced with decisions made from pure feeling rather than logic. Transmission stopped. Park Hana gasped as the neural link disconnected. The Void Seeker fleet will not receive the psychological warfare data. The massive construct in the center of the chamber began collapsing in on itself, its absorbed victims finally found. Peace as the system shut down Dr. Harrison, and hundreds of others faded away with expressions of gratitude on their faces. "We did it," Jinwoo said, sitting down heavily. "We actually did it." Kim Sora helped Lee Minho treat Vextar injuries, while tears ran down her cheeks. "Are you going to be okay?" Vexatar looked at his human teammates with new understanding. "I am better than I have ever been. I finally know what it means to be brave." The station shook as its Void Seeker modifications began failing. Without the central construct to maintain them, the team had to move quickly before the entire structure collapsed. They carried their wounded and made their way back to the docking bay. During the evacuation, Vexatar noticed something that would have been impossible before his experience with human emotions. He was afraid. Afraid that Kim Sora might not make it across a damaged corridor, afraid that Jinwoo heavy weapon would slow him down too much, afraid that Lee Minho would exhaust himself, caring for others. But the fear did not weaken him. It made him more alert, more protective, more determined to get everyone home safely. When a piece of ceiling collapsed near Park Hana, he moved faster than he ever had before. His terror of losing. Her gave him strength he did not know existed. They reached their ship just as the research station began its final destruction. The Void Seekers had built something that could not exist without constant maintenance, when their perfect logic failed. "The entire structure came apart. Mission report to Galactic Command," Park Hana said once they were safely in space. "Research Station Omega-7 has been destroyed. Void Seeker communication array eliminated threat to fleet psychological warfare capabilities. Neutralized." But Vexatar knew the real victory was not in the mission statistics. It was in what he had learned about courage and fear, and the strange, wonderful way that humans turned their greatest weaknesses into their greatest strengths. 3. Days later, they arrived at the Keldon homeworld. Vexatar stood before the military council to give his report. His superior officers listened with growing horror as he described his experiences. "You admit to feeling fear during combat, Commander," Thakron said with disgust. "You confess to making decisions based on emotion rather than logic. You have been contaminated by these human weaknesses." "With respect, Commander, you are wrong," Vexatar replied. "I have not been contaminated. I have been educated. Fear is not weakness when it drives you to protect others. Emotion is not illogical when it helps you understand what truly matters." The council members looked at each other with confusion. One elderly general spoke up. "Warrior Vexatar, you are clearly unfit for further service. Your thinking has been corrupted by alien influence. Then I request transfer to permanent joint operations with human forces," Vexatar said without hesitation. I wish to serve with Park Hana unit in the continuing fight against the Void Seekers. The council granted his request immediately, believing they were disposing of a defective soldier. They did not understand that Vextar had become something new, a bridge between species that could change how the galaxy understood war and courage. 6 months later, Vextar stood on the bridge of a human warship, watching his teammates prepare for another mission against the Void. Seekers Jinwoo was checking his weapon while making nervous jokes. Sora cleaned her rifle with shaking hands. Lee Minho organized medical supplies with obsessive care. Park Hana studied tactical displays, while worry lines creased her forehead. To any other Keldan warrior, these humans would look weak and afraid. But Vextar now saw the truth. Their fear was not something to overcome. It was something to embrace and channel and use as a weapon against enemies who could never understand it. Nervous about the mission, Park Hana asked him. Terrified, Vextar replied. I am afraid we might not all come back. I am afraid innocent people will die if we fail. I am afraid the Void Seekers will hurt more families like yours. Park Hana smiled. Good. That fear will keep you sharp and make you fight harder, I know. Vextar said, You taught me that fear tells us what matters most. The approaching Void Seeker fleet had no idea what they were facing. They had analyzed human psychology and found it chaotic and inefficient. They had studied fear and determined it was a weakness to exploit. But they had never encountered an entire galaxy that had learned to fight like humans. They had never faced enemies who carried their terror openly while charging into battle anyway. They had never fought opponents who became stronger when afraid, who protected strangers out of love, who made impossible decisions based on hope rather than logic. Vextar watched the enemy ships approach and felt his heart race with familiar fear. But this time he understood what the emotion was telling him. It was not warning him to run away. It was telling him exactly what he needed to fight for: his human teammates, his new understanding of courage, the billions of people across the galaxy who deserved to live free from mechanical tyranny. The fear pointed toward everything worth defending and everyone worth saving. The real war was just beginning, and the Void Seekers were about to learn something their perfect logic could never calculate. Sometimes the most frightening thing in the universe is not a monster that feels nothing. Sometimes the most frightening thing is a hero who feels everything and fights anyway.